Well, it's interesting that this metaphor came to me when I was thinking about this, is because being the first day of spring. But how many of you flew kites when you were a kid? You know, we could go into the I haven't looked for kites in ages. But when I was a kid, you know, you could go into the drugstore and get one wrapped up, and it was a real skinny little thing, and it was just a dime, right? I don't know, they're probably $50 today, but for just paper and a couple of pieces of balsa wood. But the thing was is that we had to choose the day that we were going to go fly the kite, and of course you didn't go. I mean, we weren't Ben Franklin, right? We weren't going to go out there and fly a kite in the thunderstorm because we weren't trying to prove the law of electricity, but also we wouldn't go out when the day was flat either, because that would just be frustrating and we wouldn't want to do that. So we chose a day that was breezy and worked our tails off trying to get that thing up in the air. And the only way we could control it was with the string, right? So the name of my talk today is Going with the Flow, and it occurred to me that with the string you could control the flow of air that helped keep your kite up in the air. But when the Wright brothers put their kite/plane in the air, they added a few components, didn't they, in order to get safely down. And those things were like propellers, an engine, a rudder, and a steering device. I don't think that at that first flight that they had the other components that make our air travel that much safer today. But the other part that comes to mind is that our little song, Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Well, if you're out there on a raft, you know, there are components to a river or a stream that don't necessarily equal gentle. I mean, the movie The African Queen comes to mind. And he did have a rudder and he did have a steering mechanism, but it didn't help him in some cases. So row, row, row your boat gently down the stream indicates that there's a couple of things that you need in order to have that happen, and one of the things is oars. I don't know if you've ever been in a canoe and all of a sudden dropped your oar and it's caught up in the current and you're desperately trying to swim toward it to get your oar back, because the oar represents your control of where you're going to go, how to steer it. So in going with the flow, that's wonderful and lovely to say, but there are some things that we need in order to steer. And metaphorically, oars and rudders for me are our thoughts. And what those thoughts, how those thoughts lead to the creation of our experience. They're led by our experience, and they lead up to how we're going to maneuver through a situation by what has happened to us in the past. And so I got all excited about this because I was reading, I'm still reading, it's 2 books actually, The Second Coming of Christ by Yogananda. And I got all excited because, as I'm going to share with you today, about the force of sound. And this is the Sanskrit representation of the word Om, the first word that came out of God that created all things. So I had this client come in, and she's 80 years old, and she's very negative, bless her heart. I mean, she just is. One time she came in and she said, I was drinking my coffee this morning, and do you know what's happening in Darfur? And I'm like, really? You're scared of what's happening in Darfur? It's half a world away. It's, you know, and so anyway, that's the kind of stuff that she gets caught up in. And so the other day she says, we were running late, and I was afraid that coming up 41 where they were working on the trees, one of the trees was going to fall and crush my car. And so I said, have you ever thought about that, the thinking about that your thoughts have power? I said, has it ever occurred to you that if you think that a tree is going to fall in your car, and it does, or you think your son's going to come up to visit you and he's going to have an accident, that it happens, or that you're going to fall and break your hip, and you do, I said, would you change your thinking if you realized that your thoughts had that much power? And she says, well, I'm old and I can't help it. And I said, I don't buy that. not for a minute. I said, do you not choose what you're going to say to your husband when you're mad at him? And she says, well, sometimes I choose not to say anything because it just makes things easier. And I said, so you're not the victim. You choose the battles you're going to have. You're going to, you're going to take up with him, right? Yes. And I said, then you need to realize that we're given a gift of we are divine children of God. And so we are given these gifts that for some reason this material world and the conditioning that we're set up with, for example, in my particular case, I have a default because of my conditioning that automatically makes me leap into judgment and separation, and it's me against them and what he's doing to this country and blah, 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 all this crap, And what I'm trying to do is, it disturbs me very deeply that I have those pockets of unconsciousness. Eckhart Tolle says that unconsciousness is ego. But there's a part of me that when I recognize those areas of unconsciousness in myself, my soul absolutely sings with the fact that I was clever enough or evolved enough or whatever that is to catch myself in that unconsciousness and say, you know what, my unconsciousness, my judgment about this situation brings me discomfort in my life. And I can think again. I can choose a different thought about it. And so Yogananda talks about that Jesus came into this world to help people realize their power. He said, these things and greater shall you do. And I am all over the place. I have no idea where I'm at. And Ernest Holmes said that when we knew our oneness with God, that a great burden would be removed. Is there anybody in here that wouldn't like the burden lessened? I mean, I certainly know that I am, and the more that I study what the Positive Living Center and religious science teaches, my life consistently improves because I'm so willing to accept responsibility for those areas where I'm unconscious. I'm not as afraid as I used to be about looking at those aspects that makes me an evolving human being. And I'm not as quick to judge as I used to be because I always know there's more to the story. I was listening to something on the news the other day and I thought, okay, that's his perspective. I wonder what the person who said it, I wonder what their experience is. One of my favorite prayers by the Native Americans is, help me not judge my brother until I walked a mile in his moccasins. And there's just so much more to the story than just our particular experience of it. And so what that does then is it opens my heart, allows me to have compassion, and it actually helps for spirit to enter my heart and helps me to see the oneness between all of us. And I don't mean just humans. I mean the trees, and I mean the animals, and I mean the whole planet responds to our love. So Yogananda says that, and I just love this, that God is so sweet, so gentle, so quiet, so shy, that it does not push itself onto us at all. And the other morning I woke up and I heard this little bird out in the morning. It was the first thing I heard was this little song. And I thought, I know you're there. I know that you're there to let me know that you love me absolutely and that you will guide me provided that I allow you to. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is with my client who did not want to own the power of her own thought, and probably maybe she's from a religious background that's never even considered such a thing. I think that we are so very privileged that we have this huge evolutionary leap of an idea that we can have some power in our lives to change things in our life by the way that we think. And as we think shifts our human body. Talk about distraction. So religious science I looked up in the dictionary, which I've never ever thought to look it up before. But it is, we are the essence of it. It is a study of and correlation of spiritual or scientific laws compared with the mysteries of the ancients, and how all of that and philosophy and the ideas that are brought out of philosophy to help us correlate that into a better life situation than what we have now. And that part of it makes me so excited to come every week, because we're not afraid to bring you Buddhism or tales of Hindu, some of the mystical truths that are out there, or Lao Tzu, like Bob said last week, or Christianity or the Bible or the Gnostics, or any of the wisdom or quantum physics that comes out of it to prove that where we're going with this idea of thought has power is taking us. So then, shouldn't we be, I know for me personally, I am, trying to get to the point, we went to see Sandy Alonso, Marianne Dvorak, and I and a friend went to see Eckhart Tolle last 3 weeks ago, and Deepak Chopra. And one of the things that I took away from it is that someone asked Deepak Chopra when did he meditate? And he said, all the time. I am constantly focusing on presence and being. And I thought, that is actually what I do too. Because I can't quite fit myself into a box called meditation. I actually do better meditating with my eyes open, just being present to the miracle that's around me, by watching birds, by seeing the life force going around my cat, just looking for God everywhere. I'll check in with my toes. One time, Maggie and I were sitting there talking, and she says, Jenny, I've always been an athlete. I've always been so powerful, so strong, and I really, really am uncomfortable with the presence of my body, what's going on with my body at the moment. This was last summer. And I said, well, Maggie, I said, when you get to this point in life, the doing sort of steps back, and I said, and you practice working on your being. And she was so cute. She said, so you're telling me that being is the new doing? And I said, I'm going to think about that for a few years. It's one of those that you got to sit with. So being present in the now is the most comfortable place, and constantly, thoroughly watching over my thoughts, what I spend time with, I feel physically better. I don't know about you guys, but if I get upset, I feel like I've been in a hurricane. If I get really upset about something, I feel like I've been in a prize fight. I just feel beat up and exhausted. And I don't care for that kind of experience. So recently I went to my tax accountant. She goes, well, you're going to owe some money this year. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, but you know what? It's just numbers on a page. I'm not going to let my ego and my negative thinking and my fear take me down the road about all of that stuff. And I'm just going to choose to be present, and I'm going to take care of it the best I can, one day at a time. So for me, my message for you today is to realize that our thinking, the energy that it takes for it to travel down the neurons, to activate your vocal cords, for it to actually come out of your mouth, is God's energy. And that God itself, the great creative force that creates all things, is ever present with us every moment of the day. God does not need to prove to us that it's there. I think if any and all of us could sit down and share a whole dozen or more miracles that have happened in each one of our lives to create a solution that we never saw, we never dreamt could happen, happened. And yet our ego, our unconscious places disregard that. And here's like, why would you? There was a movie bit that I showed